Okay, so today we're going to be studying selections from the Talmud. Let me give you a little background as to what this is. There is a book called Ein Ya'akov. Ein Ya'akov was written by a great Chacham many hundreds of years ago. His name was Rabbi Ya'akov ben Habib. And he wrote a book, Ein Ya'akov. Now let me tell you about the Ein Ya'akov. Actually, all the Ein Ya'akov is, as I said, is selections from the Talmud. But the selections are more midrashic, more agadic, less of the back and forth, less of the legalese, more of the stories, more of the derashot. And what's nice about the Ein Ya'akov is that in the old country, so among the Sephardim, it wasn't customary for everybody to study Gemara. The Gemara is a technical book. And when the Chacham would give a class in the Knis, you can't teach Gemara like publicly, and expect everybody to understand it properly and precisely. So they used to study Ein Ya'akov. It was a very popular book until, let's say, the recent generation. I remember when I was younger, I used to study Ein Ya'akov. Before I started studying Gemara, I studied Ein Ya'akov. My father, Allah Hashem, taught me. And then later on, we got into the Gemara, and then I was more ready for the Gemara. So some people said they want to study Gemara, other people said they don't want to study Gemara, some people want to study this. I think Ein Ya'akov is a nice topic. I think you'll enjoy it. So let's start. This is from the Gemara in Masechet Berachot. This is in the Perek Aleph, and it's talking about David HaMelech. And there's a pasuk where David HaMelech says the following: Shomra nafshi ki hasid ani. What does that mean? So David HaMelech is praying to God, and he's saying, God, to protect him. And he's saying, and God, why should you protect me? He says, Ki hasid ani. I'm a hasid. Okay. What is that? What type of prayer is that? You're telling God, I'm a hasid, and therefore I want you to protect me. Usually you want to say, maybe a little humble. You want to be a little circumspect. That's what he says.
Saying that he can't serve in the army, so he needs
he can't serve in the army. Okay, I like that. Yes. Save me from the Zionists. Okay, now there was none of that back then. But that's what he says. So I want to explain to you part of the idea of hasidut in biblical thinking, and this is how David HaMelech is thinking. So today, when you think of Hasid, you think about they have different sects and different customs, and each sect has a rebbe or particular ideas that they follow. The biblical idea of Hasid is a person who is willing to give up where he doesn't need to give up. And I want to explain why that's important and how that is so. So in the case of David HaMelech was being chased by Shaul. Shaul wanted to kill him. And David HaMelech had several opportunities where he could have defended himself against Shaul, and he could have killed Shaul in a sense, in self-defense. But he never did. He did not defend himself. And even when Shaul died, he could have said, okay, I'm the king now. By right, the Navi came to him, Shemuel came to him and says, you're the king. Okay, when Shaul was alive, you didn't want to fight with him, no problem, you were a hasid. Now that he's dead, you should be the king, take over. He didn't want to. He went to the city of Hebron. He was in the city of Hebron for 7 years. And he said, the people want me to be king, I'll be king. If they don't want me to be king, I won't be king. So that's the idea of hasidut. The idea of hasidut is a person who acts in a way where he is not going to fight with other people. He's not going to act in a way which is politically motivated, even though he could, right? That's the idea of hasidut. Hasidut is more of it's a humble state of mind where you tell God, I'm looking for you to help me, right? I'm not going to hurt anybody. I could if I want to, but I won't do it. I'm not going to do it. So now you understand what he says, Shamira nafshi ki hasid ani. Thank you. Shamira nafshi ki hasid. Now you understand why he's saying it. He's saying it because he's saying, God, I'm not going to defend myself. I'm not going to take a gun and shoot Shaul. I'm not going to shoot his children. I'm not going to do anything bad. I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to force the Jewish people to be the king. And therefore, he can say in his prayer, I need you to protect me, so that if you don't protect me, I'm going to run away. He ran away from Shaul, right? He wasn't relying on miracles, but he would not hurt Shaul. You see what I'm saying? So now you understand the prayer. Let's start with.
But isn't there also an issue of being too passive? Like God said, you can. Okay,
right.
When Shaul was alive, you're not going to kill him. But now Shaul is dead. God told you to be king. Step up and do your job.
I think he was intelligent, because there was a lot of resentment against David after Shaul died. And for example, the tribe of Benjamin. Shaul was from the tribe of Benjamin, right? Mm-hmm. The tribe of Benjamin was not willing to accept him under no circumstance. Had he forced the issue, he would have turned the Israeli monarchy into a dictatorship. And he didn't want the Israeli monarchy to be a dictatorship. He could have, you're right. He could have said, that's it, guys. I'm the king now. Shaul is dead. God made his choice. God chose me. You all know what Shemuel Hanavi said. I'm the king. Tough luck on you if you don't accept me. And he could have gone.
That he appointed that
Shemuel was already dead. By the time Shaul died, Shemuel was dead. But the point is, he didn't want to turn the Israeli monarchy into dictatorship. He could have. He could have been just like everybody else. But any other king would have just said, including Jewish king. The prophet came to me. He made me king. You better accept it or else, right? But he didn't do that. So you understand the idea of hasidut. It's a very beautiful trait of David HaMelech, and we were blessed as a nation, because when he became the king, it wasn't by force, it was by consensus. Everybody wanted him to be the king. You understand? One of the problems with democracy, and I can't think of a better governmental system, but one of the problems with democracy is the people often choose leaders who are not worthy, that fool them. Like people just chose Mamdani. Everybody's going to get free things in New York. Let's see the free things. Nothing's going to be free. But they chose him because he fooled them, right? So that happens a lot in democracies, where the people running for office, they fool the population. Now the other side is, you can have a dictatorship where a guy just takes power and says, the heck with it. So David HaMelech didn't want to have either of that. Meaning, he didn't want to take power. He also was not going to take any power just because people voted. So God chose him. And after God chose him, he said, if the people now choose me, I will be the leader or the king. But I don't want to be a demagogue.
At what point did the people choose him? And was there
7 years later?
What did they do specifically?
Yeah, so that's the book of Shemuel that gets into all the story, why he was in Hebron originally, and then little by little they realize he's the person who should be king, but not before there was some nasty stuff happening.
It's interesting because he had the opportunity, he didn't take it.
Yeah.
But then, and he said he had opportunities to, kill his attacker, basically.
Yeah.
Self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't take it.
Which we studied about last week. Remember? We studied about the laws of death.
Right. But in another case, if the situation was changed, that he didn't take that opportunity and then he ended up dead, we would say it's like the situation of the guy that he's drowning and God sent the helicopter and okay, how many signs you want?
Right, that's true.
He tried to run away. He did. He tried to run away. And God was with him. And he eventually escaped. I mean, again, not without harm.
So I guess part of being a chassid is also knowing when to take the opportunity and when you could pass it up.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Shamelana Shika Hasidani. Rabbi Levi. So they want to give different things. David HaMelech was not the typical king. Can you imagine a king 3,000 years ago? Right, what they were like. They were not. You remember, anybody here remember Saddam Hussein? Mm-hmm. Right? So sometimes the Iraqi soccer team wouldn't do very well. It was not a good time to be a soccer player in Iraq if the Saddam Hussein was a dictator and they didn't do well in the soccer game. I'm told that it was an unpleasant experience. So that was about 30 years ago, let's say, or 20 years ago, whatever it was. Imagine 3,000 years ago, 3,500 years ago, what it was like to be a dictator. These people were ruthless, right? I mean, so now he's going to say, Rabbi Levi and Rabbi Yitzhak. There's two opinions. One of them was Rabbi Levi, the other is Rabbi Yitzhak. Hadama. One of them says as follows, to illustrate the hasidut of David. This is what King David, or one of the things that King David was referring to. Ribono shel olam, creator of the cosmos. Lo hasid ani. Am I not a hasid? שכל מלכיהם נזרחו מעלה וישימה 3 שעות ואני חסות לילה אקום להודות לך. All the kings whether the kings in the east of Israel is the Orient, China, those places, Persia, wherever, and Ma'ara, that's the west, the area of the Greek islands and westward. All the kings all over the world in human civilization, they would sleep in till 3 hours after sunrise. Right? Now, the Mishnah in Masechet Berachot, it says, until when you allowed to say Kriyat Shema in the morning? What is the latest you could say Kriyat Shema in the morning?
3 hours.
Until 3 hours after sunrise. And what is the reason that you can say Kriyat Shema until 3 hours after sunrise? Because even the king, even if you're like a nobility, you were an aristocrat, and you're not like the regular people. So let me explain. The regular people, they would wake up. Back then, the economy was based on agriculture. So people would wake up early in the morning before the sun was out to work in the field, because it's very difficult to work when the sun is high up in the horizon. So all the agricultural work was done early. So people would wake up very early in the morning and go out and do the work in the fields. The kings, the nobility, the aristocrats, they would sleep in. They would sleep until 3 hours after sunrise. That was considered like a big thing. Nowadays, I think if people wake up 3 hours before sunset, that's like, that's more like it, right? I don't know. But at least on Sundays, whatever, okay. Anyway, so that's what he's referring to. He's saying that all these people, I'm an aristocrat, I'm a king, I can sleep in all I want. So the Gemara says, and it brings the Pasuk in Tehillim, that David HaMelech had the custom that he would wake up midnight every night, and he would sing praises to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So perhaps we can say that the book of Tehillim was written during these midnight Ruach HaKodesh experiences that David HaMelech had Ruach HaKodesh. The Gemara says that, how did he wake up Hasot Laila? There was no alarm clock back then. So it says that he had like a kino, like a harp, or maybe not a harp, more like an oud, whatever, a string instrument, and it was hanging on the window by David HaMelech's bedroom, and then a wind would come in and play music on the harp, and then he would hear the music, and he would wake up, and he would be inspired with Ruach HaKodesh, and that's, I speculate, when he wrote the book of Tehillim. So the book of Tehillim was written when there was silence, nobody was bothering him, he slept a few hours, let's say sunset, 6, 7 o'clock, whatever, 5 o'clock, sleep for a few hours, wake up, and now he's inspired with Ruach HaKodesh, and he would sing praises to God. So Hasot Laila Kum Leodot Lach, that's when he would wake up. He wasn't waiting till sunrise to wake up, or 3 hours after sunrise to wake up, but to the contrary, from midnight, that was his time when he would wake up. It says on the book of Tehillim, by the way, Hasot Laila Kum Leodot Lach. So that's a certain type of hasidut. Ironically, I once went to the Kotel. I was going there to pray Mincha. It was Shabbat, and there we did minyan. It was like a few hours before sunset. I was there, it was regular Mincha. I said, I'm looking for minyan, for minyan, and then I realized they're praying Shachrit. I was like, wow. So are you praying Shachrit? So they say, no. In our hasidut, we believe we're above time, so we pray Shachrit whenever, like late in the day. So David HaMelech's hasidut was the opposite. He would wake up midnight and start saying his Tehillim and being inspired to compose these beautiful poems. When I say inspired, I mean, of course, I'm referring to Nevuat, Ruach HaKodesh. Okay, not just inspiration.
Did you back out of the minyan?
I did not. I told him, I'm really sorry. I already prayed Shachrit. I had to pray Mincha. I said, no, you can pray Mincha after sunset. I said, I prefer. It's okay. All right. Veidach, Kach Amar David. Another explanation of the hasidut of David. Lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ribono she'olam, creator of the cosmos. Lo hasid ani. Am I not a hasid? שכל מלכי מזרח ומערב יושבים אגודות בכבודם, ואני ידיי מלוכלכות בדם ובשפיר ובשליה כדי לטהר אישה לבעלה. So he says, if you look at all the kings, doesn't matter where the kings are, they're in the east, they're in the west. What do the kings love having? They love having their own private clubs. They love having parties. They love having parties where you invite the rich and the wealthy and the famous. So these kings are sitting down together, having these great parties. You remember the party of Ahashverosh, right? First he has a party of 180 days. That's just for nobility. Then he lets the regular people then. Okay, he did a 7-day party. We have to give him credit for that. But the regular nobility, the military, all these important people, 180-day party. So he says, these kings, they love having these huge parties where they honor themselves. So David HaMelech was of course not just had the Ruach HaKodesh, but he was a great Chacham, and he would know how to distinguish between a pure and impure blood in order to examine whether a woman is pure for her husband and not pure for her husband. So they would come to him and they would show him it's called Mar'ot Adam, they would show him because they would have the cloth. And he says, now this is something, you're a king, this is what you're dealing with, aren't you embarrassed? He says, no, this is what I want to do. I want to help. Nobody knew these laws. I know the laws. So they would wait and they would get the Pesach Halakha of David HaMelech. Is she tahor or is she tameh? Does she have to count another 7 days? What's halakha? They want to know the halakha, right? But I wanted to do this so that if a woman is pure, I can tell her husband, don't worry, she's pure, you can be with her, and like that bring more happiness between man and woman, husband and wife, of course, and that's a zechut of David HaMelech. So instead of going to these grandiose parties, he was dealing with these issues that really for a king are not becoming. He said, I'm a hasid, that's what I do. Yeah.
This is all in the Gemara.
This is
every word that we're reading here, every word that you find in the En Yaakov is from the Gemara. You understand? All of this is from the Gemara.
So what did the En Yaakov add?
All the En Yaakov did was he took the selections of the midrashic selections of the Gemara and he put them down, but then he also wrote a commentary on the bottom to the midrashim. This is just what we're reading. We're not reading his commentary. We are reading the actual text of the Gemara. You understand?
Which happens to be midrash.
Which is midrashic in nature, and as you'll see, there's a lot of there's a certain poetic beauty to the midrashim, and we'll continue seeing that. But so far we see 2 reasons why David HaMelech is considered a hasid. Instead of wasting his time on parties, he was wasting his time to try to help a husband and wife figure out what's going on and whether they can be together, or wake up early in the morning to do to sing praises to Hashem and compose the book of Tehillim. Okay, Ve'la'od. Furthermore, says David HaMelech to God, Ella.
Just to be clear,
Yeah.
This is them saying potentially what David might have could say, because we don't easily visualize him saying, "Am I not a Hasid?"
Right, but the idea of Hasid is I'm not a person who pushes my power. I give you an example. I just give you an example of a Hasid. Like somebody, old lady cuts me off in a line. I could easily cut her off. Just go, please. It's okay. No, God bless you. Right? Meaning, you're not using your force. You're not using your strength. You're not using what you can use. You're giving. Okay, you take it. It's yours. You got it. Right? You got it. You take it. Right? So he's a king. He doesn't need to be spending his time with a husband and wife and this and that. He doesn't need to be waking up midnight. He's a king. He can wake up whenever he wants to. All right, let's continue.
One more question.
Yes, sir, please.
When these Agadot appear in the Gemara, are they coming to teach us either some sort of ancillary halacha or
no? So in this case, it's trying to teach us what does it mean to be a hasid. That's exactly what the Gemara teaches.
There would have been a discussion before this about hasidut.
No. This is the way the Chachamim discuss hasidut. It's exactly like this. I mean, we come from a Western world, so we look for encyclopedias or Wikipedia, and we're always thinking, how do you learn something? So I check it up, or and it explains to me this and this and this and this, right?
Yeah.
But the Chachamim, they had a more poetic way of conveying concepts. You see, the poetry here. It's like it takes you into the ethos, the feelings behind the concept of a hasidut. You understand? Rather, a hasid is a person who does this and this and this. But no, it's like it's giving you the story, right? So you see how sometimes poetry is more effective because it gives you the real feelings behind it, right? For halakha, no. Halakha is not a question of feelings or halakha. But here, one step, so it tells you these stories.
And it's like a poetic license to make it a creative, like, wow, potentially you could see this could be a conversation between David and Kadosh Baruch Hu. Not that it probably happened,
right?
Because he's not going to be tooting his own horn, so to speak. But the Chachamim want to frame it in a way that this could be said about David.
Here is a conversation that took place between David and God.
Right.
And from this play, we're writing like a beautiful play, like Shakespeare, where there's undertones of what hasidut are, how a person can come to God, and what we consider important in the world, what God considers important. Right?
It's not a factual conversation. It's a
poetic
description of a hypothetical conversation.
Right, exactly. It's more hypothetical, based upon David HaMelech and who he was, so we bring this conversation. Right?
And the fact that
he really was this person, meaning, did this conversation happen or not? I don't know. But was this who he was? So the answer is yes. You see, that's another way of saying this is who David HaMelech was. I'll give you an example. Did George Washington really chop down his father's cherry tree? I don't know. I maybe not. And did he say, Daddy, I cannot tell a lie? But it's telling us something about George Washington, meaning we admire, apparently there was something about George Washington that was admirable, and he wouldn't lie, and he was always very transparent to people, and then they developed this story. Now, did it really happen? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows, right? You see, so that's exactly this. That's what's happening here.
Right, because how many hundreds of years later in the Gemara, how would they have known that particular conversation? You can't take it too
right.
long.
A lot of the Gemara has that.
Exactly. So this is where the Gemara conveys ideas about people, about concepts, about
Great.
All right. So let's continue. ולא עוד, אלא שכל מה שאני עושה אני נמלך מפיבושת רבי. My rabbi, Mephibosheth, I don't do anything without speaking to my rabbi. Let me tell you what this means. It's nothing to do with what you think. You think, he was a Hasid and he had like a Rebbe. No. Let me tell you who Mephibosheth was. Mephibosheth was the son of Yonatan. I'm sorry. So let me tell you what happened. So Shaul, of course, found out that David is going to be king, and he went a little crazy, and he hunted down David. Now, Shaul's son Yonatan was best friends with David. They loved each other. They had a berit that they're always going to try to help each other no matter what happens. They're always going to be helping each other. So even when Shaul was hunting David to kill him, Yonatan was still with David HaMelech. There's actually one story where Yonatan comes to visit him and he says, I know that one day you will be king and I will be your second in command. That's what Yonatan tells him. Yonatan realized that David came and told David, you're king. So Yonatan said, that's it, I'm giving up. Also, that's a hasidut, by the way. If you think about it, right? He should have wanted to kill David more than his father. Because David is taking his job, right? Okay, doesn't matter. That's what Yonatan wants, a beautiful personality. Now, so eventually what happens is a war. And during the war, Shaul dies. He commits suicide, rightfully so, because they were gonna torture him to death. So he falls on his sword. Yonatan is killed in the war right now, and a lot of the descendants of Shaul were killed. Now, what happened is when the war was over, now David is king in Hebron, because I said he did not become king over all of Israel at first. At first, he was in the city of Hebron, and only the tribe of Yehudah accepted him at first. So when he was there, establishing himself as a mini king, right? He sent a message. He wanted to find out, does anybody know any descendants of Yonatan, my friend? And the answer is Mephibosheth. So Mephibosheth is the son of Yonatan, and David HaMelech tells him, I want you to come to the palace, and you're going to eat off the royal food, and I'm going to take care of you for the rest of your life. And he put him next to the palace. He had his own house, and Mephibosheth was treated like royalty by David. Again, any other situation, Mephibosheth would have been executed by David because he's a threat to the kingdom. And they used to do this all the time. I mean, brothers killing brothers, And I think Caligula killed everybody in his family, probably his own children. I think he killed them also. These people were crazy people. But that was very common. Now, Mephibosheth isn't even a relative. Mephibosheth is the grandson of the person who was hunting David. He should have killed him. Of course, he doesn't kill him. As I said, he treats him like royalty. Now, what happened? When Avshalom, the son of David, wants to kill his father has to run away from Jerusalem. It's a little ambiguous. Mephibosheth wasn't exactly helping David, let's put it that way. In his mind, he's thinking, good. Like my grandfather, Shaul, was hunting David HaMelech, and look what's happening to David now. He wasn't exactly helping him. And then when Shaul eventually comes back to Jerusalem, he says, Mephibosheth, where were you? Like, why didn't you join me? Like, I'm sorry. Avshalom is killed, and David now can return to Jerusalem, and he sees Mephibosheth, and he's like, oh, why weren't you with me? Like, I helped you. I got you this house. Everything here, and okay, a little ambiguous what Mephibosheth was intending, but clearly he wasn't the best friend of David. How about we put it like that? So now you understand this. David HaMelech showed respect to Mephibosheth way beyond what he needed to show him. You know, the fact that he doesn't kill the guy is it's itself great, but the Gemara takes it to another level. So
David was the son of Yonatan?
Yes. Mephibosheth was the son of Yonatan, the grandson of Shaul. Exactly. So the Gemara says, Lo od ela kol ma shani oseh ani nimlat ben Mephibosheth Rabbi. I treat Mephibosheth like he's my rabbi. Anything I do, I speak to him. Omelo, Mephibosheth Rabbi, Yafeh Danti. What do you think of this judgment? This guy wrote a contract, the other guy this, he was supposed to pay him money. Did you like? You see the way I just made the judgment? You agree? Yafeh Hayabti, you agree? I said that guy has to pay him money. Was that correct? Yafeh Zikiti, I said, no, this guy doesn't have to pay him money. Yafeh Tihati, I said, this is Tahor. Yafeh Timeti, this is Tameh. Did I make a mistake? If I made a mistake, tell me. Meaning, who is Mephibosheth and who is David? David is the king, chosen by God. Mephibosheth is the grandson of the king, who sadly died in a horrible death. And he was not somebody that somehow can judge David, but David wanted Mephibosheth to feel like he was important. So he went out of his way to give Mephibosheth that feeling. So Mephibosheth doesn't feel a sense of inferiority or loss, right? Because he should have also been the king. All right. So that's all. That's hasidut. That's a classic example of hasidut, right? Amar Rabbi Yeshua.
Chesed. He's doing an act of chesed, making him feel.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Good. Yes. Amar Rabbi Yeshua bered Ravidi. Maikera. Rabbi Yeshua bered Ravidi says, is there any verse that would somehow allude to the idea that David HaMelech would consult with Mephibosheth? Is there some allusion to this perhaps? And they say, yes, there is. In the book of Tehillim, David HaMelech says the following words, Va'adabera be'edotecha, I speak about your laws, God. Meaning he was a judge. David HaMelech was a judge, and he would, as a king, he would also judge, tahor, tameh, hayav, zakai. Neged melachim, I would speak in the presence of other kings. Who's the other kings? Some other kings. He's a king. What do you mean? Neged melachim. He's a king. We have one king in Israel. So that's an allusion to Mephibosheth, who should have been the king, but he speaks in the presence of Mephibosheth, and he treats him as if though he is also a king. Velo ebosh. Now, what do you have in the word ebosh? Boshet. Right?
His name.
Right. Exactly. His name Mephibosheth.
Okay.
Right. So I wouldn't be embarrassed to speak to Mephibosheth. You understand the idea? So that's so here we see the allusion to the idea of David HaMelech consulting with Mephibosheth. And again, the idea of hasidut is quite lovely.
We're just touching the surface of the mastery of Tanakh and how, all different verses that the Chachamim were able to weave into this story and to find allusions to the minutest degree to be able to put this together.
Yes, of course. And this is a derashah, of course. It's a derashah, but shivim panim laTorah. So the Chachamim make these types of derashah. And you have the pasuk that says that he spoke in the presence of kings, velo evosh, and he wasn't afraid, and so they associate it with this, with Mephibosheth. All right, Hannah. Lo Mephibosheth shemo, ela ish Boshet shemo. Ve'lama nikra shemo Mephibosheth, she'aya mevayesh bnei David b'halacha. Now, the original name of Mephibosheth was Ish Boshet. Ish Boshet, because it says, let me explain to you, why would a person call his son Boshet? Boshet really means embarrassment. So, what would Yonatan call his son Mephibosheth? So, Az panim legehenom uboshet panim legan eden. The Chachamim tell us that a person is very arrogant to people and fierce and always fighting. That's az panim. He's like a panther, right? So az panim, roaring at people, he's going to go to Gehinnom. Boshet panim, if a person has a certain sense of embarrassment, of humility, he doesn't just go in an arrogant way and demand things and fight and grab. That's called busha, boshet panim. That's boshet panim legan eden. So that's now you see why it was called Mephi-boshet, right? I want you to understand the idea why anybody would call themselves the son Mephi-boshet, right? That this person is a person who has busha and therefore he goes to Gan Eden. You understand? Mm-hmm. Okay, but they said their original name was Ish Boshet, a man who has embarrassment. Again, the idea of Boshet Panim. So why was he called Mephi-boshet? So why was the name changed from Ish Boshet to Mephi-boshet? Shehaya mevayesh bnei David balacha. So originally it was Ish Boshet because the idea of Yonatan calling his son Ish Boshet was this person is going to have humility. He's not going to be fierce to people, right? Again, hasidut. But you understand the idea of hasidut? But they switched it to Mephi-boshet because Mephi is an abbreviation of mefik. What does mapik mean in Aramaic? To take something out. So mafik boshet means he causes embarrassment in other people. You understand the switch? Instead of people being a person who has boshet panim, he's humble, a good person, he's a person who embarrasses other. Because he used to humiliate David HaMelech because he had a chip on his shoulder, what happened to his father, what happened to his grandfather, and he would always try to embarrass David HaMelech in matters of law. So even if David HaMelech would ask him what the law is, he's just, you don't know. You know what the Shulchan Aruch says, you know what the Rambam says, right? You know Rambam, what is wrong with you? Why are you even judging? Right? He had to say that to embarrass the guy. Lefichach, and so you see Ish Boshet becomes Mephi-boshet. You understand that Ish Boshet Mephi? Okay. Lefichach, Azachah David v'yasa mimenu Kil'av. So David HaMelech had one of his first sons was Kil'av. Let me tell you, Kil'av was when David HaMelech married Avishag. Avishag was okay. So let me tell you what happened with Avishag, and then you understand the idea of Kil'av, what the name Kil'av means. Okay, because it's important for the story. So Avishag was married to a person who was very stubborn, very rich person, but very cheap. And he has a confrontation with David. I don't want to get into it now because it's going to be in our next class in David HaMelech. But he has a confrontation. The guy dies. He gets a heart attack. So basically, long story short, he was supposed to pay David with food, with something, and he refused to, and David HaMelech was going to kill him. So Avishag, she doesn't want her husband to be killed by David. So she goes, she gives David and David's shoulders all this food, soldiers, all the food and everything. And David HaMelech says, okay, I'm not going to kill your husband. Okay, fine. The guy finds out he was so cheap that he got a heart attack, and he died. The Chachamim said he had the heart attack on Rosh Hashanah, and he died on Yom Kippur. Okay, he's dead. David HaMelech found out that he's dead. And look, David HaMelech is a man at the end of the day, and Avishag apparently was quite attractive. He goes back and he says, will you marry me? Not exactly those words, not a Hollywood movie, but that's kind of the idea. Actually, he marries her, but he doesn't marry her until 3 months pass. Because according to Jewish law, you don't want to marry a woman who was just married because you don't know who the child is going to be from, right? So they're 3 months, and on that date, David HaMelech marries her. What happens? The Gemara says, Lesaneh Hador, the jokesters of that generation, they said, the child, she's pregnant, she's probably pregnant from her previous husband, doesn't even belong to David. So what did God do? So there's a similar thing in this week's parasha. It says, Ele Toledot Yitzchak ben Abraham, Abraham ulidit Yitzchak. So the pasuk says, these are the generations of Yitzchak, the son of Abraham. Abraham gave back birth to Yitzchak. So the Chachamim say, you just said it's Yitzchak ben Abraham. Why do you have to repeat that Abraham gave birth to Yitzchak? Right? I understand that, right? So they say, because Lesaneh Hador, the jokesters of that generation were saying that really Sarah got pregnant from Avimelech. And there's no way Abraham could have gotten her pregnant. He was too old and this and that. So Hashem made a miracle that Yitzchak looked exactly splitting image of his father. So nobody could say that, by the way, I used to have this guy drive me to work. I worked in a technology company in Israel as an attorney. And he was a Chiloni, so every ride, we go to work. Yeah, very nice person, I have nothing against him. But every single ride we took, he would try to convince me that the Torah was no good. Whatever, I didn't care. It was like, just whatever, I just want to get to work. Go.
People will do to go to the carpooling.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I was like, so once, he said, Sarah, really, it can't be that Avraham Avinu got her pregnant because he was 100 years old. Obviously, she was fooling around. She's 90 years old, by the way. I don't want to tell you. People are such hamorim. I'm sorry. Many of these kilonim in Israel are actual hamorim. And I don't want to insult hamorim when I say this, and maybe I apologize to any donkeys that may be hearing this recording, but that's what they are. And I could have told him what the Gemara said. I said, you know what? I can't be with this person anymore. I found another way to get to work. I never spoke to him again for the rest of my life after this, and I think he knows the reason. Just enough is enough. Would he ever say that, by the way, about George Washington, that he really was an illegitimate child? Would they say this about anybody else? But if it's a Torah figure, we know that he was illegitimate. Good, right? You do not have Oedipal complex. You do not have psychological issues. You are normal. Anyway, getting back to the point. So they wanted to say the same thing about David HaMelech. They wanted to say that Kil'av was really the son of Naval HaYisraeli. So Hashem made a miracle, and he looked exactly like David HaMelech, and that's Kil'av is an acronym for Kulo Av, exactly like his father. You understand the name Kil'av? Kulo Av. So just like Yitzchak looked just like Abraham to shut the mouths of these rogues from that generation, Hashem made Kil'av look like David to shut the mouths of the people in his generation. All right. But the Gemara says a derasha. So now that you know the peshat, now you can understand the derasha. Because he used to embarrass Mephibosheth. So Mephibosheth was embarrassing his David. So David was Anab. He could have answered Mephibosheth. He didn't want to because he didn't want to do any hurt Yonatan's legacy at all. And Mephibosheth was the son of Yonatan, so he kept his mouth shut. But Kil'av, the son of David, was like, I'm not going to let you speak to my father like that. And he used to embarrass Mephibosheth, and so that Mephibosheth didn't know what he was talking about. And that's why Shlomo Melech was talking about his brother. But Shlomo Melech wrote the verse that when you have an intelligent son who has an intelligent heart, it brings happiness to the father. So Shlomo Melech wasn't talking about himself, he was talking about his brother Kil'av. Shlomo Melech was not the son of Arishad, he was the son of Bathsheba, but nevertheless it's his half brother, and he saw how his brother was bringing such happiness to his father. A person who has an intelligent son, it makes him a happy heart. And the pasuk continues and says, and through my intelligent son, I can answer those who would humiliate me. So who is it that would humiliate him? And the answer is, David HaMelech was humiliated by Mephibosheth, and the Chacham Ben, which was Kil'av, answered Mephibosheth. All right. So we're going to stop here for a moment, and I'm going to take questions, and then we'll go another 5 minutes.
Why Kil'av and not why Shlomo and not Kil'av?
Why? What do you mean? Why?
Become king.
But there's some question about that, because also Kil'av was born well before Shlomo HaMelech, right? There's a different speculation. We don't know the reason. Some speculate that he saw the fighting, that Adoniah wanted to be king, Avshalom wanted to be king. Avshalom was a son from another woman, and then Adoniah wanted to be king, and he just said, you know what? He said, I don't want to have anything to do with this. Do me a favor, keep me out of politics. He was a big time Chacham. We know that from here. He was one of the people that entered Gan Eden straight from Olam Hazeh, straight to Gan Eden. Wow. Was Kil'av. And so he was apparently a very high level of spirituality. And as such, he didn't want to deal with politics and the fighting. And you want the kingship? Go. Take it. It's yours. I'd always rather study some Gemara or more than a Nebuchim or something else, and not get involved in politics.
But weren't they before the time of the Gemara? Like how would they Like what?
Oh, well before, of course.
So how would they argue halacha? Like strictly
So
following
So many of the
Torah?
So there's a book called the Get It Shiriragon. Many of the arguments, not all, many of the arguments you have in the Gemara are long-standing arguments from earlier generations. Then when the Gemara came, they wanted to kind of have a final discussion on the matter and a final resolution of the matter because they knew that soon the exiles will proliferate and it would be over. There would be no more unified Jewish judicial body or no more yeshivot. So a lot of the Gemara discussions were discussions that took place earlier. Now, at the same time, I would admit there are many things in the Gemara that they didn't discuss, of course, but a lot of these issues they did. Yeah.
They didn't have the ability. They didn't have the ability to write these arguments.
Right, because back then,
into writing.
yeah.
Like the way they would write a Torah, they wouldn't be able to write these.
Right. So first of all, they would, meaning it wasn't written as a formal book. But the Tanakh is a national book of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Torah Shebe'al Peh was an oral law. There was no formal book of the Torah Shebe'al Peh, unlike the Tanakh, which is the formal Torah Shebichtav, and that is the Torah, the national book of Israel. There was no Torah Shebe'al Peh written, but rather people would take notes and they would study and they would read the notes. Like if I go to law school, so they'll read all these different common law cases. They'll take notes and summarize. This judge said this, the other one said that, in different jurisdictions and try to figure it out, right? So back then it was more like a common law tradition, where there was no official formulation of the law, but rather the judges had the Masoret, they had the law from Moshe Rabbeinu, and they would rule based on that law. But there was areas of course, of disagreement, and there were some areas which weren't given by Moshe Rabbeinu, and on that there was details where one Chacham would say one thing, and another Chacham would say another thing. Yes, correct.
I like the way that you frame it, where where you get out of the problem of oral law not being able to be written. Yet but if notes and it's not a formal book, you're okay. Because how else are they going to remember all these different? There's so much that took place.
Yes.
So how did they finally when it? Then Rabbi Yehuda Nasi probably said, "Okay, I'm going to compile all the notes and put it. And now what was not allowed, Hora'at Sha'ah. Now we're allowed to write it down because we're going to lose all these notes or these oral things that we need to."
By the time Rabbeinu HaKadosh comes, which was thousands of years after David Melech, by the way, by the time he comes, they had 13 different traditions of the oral law. Not that they were disagreeing with each other, but it was different formulations. It's like imagine somebody's taking notes on my class, and then you're taking notes on my class, and you're taking notes on my class, and there's 3 sets of notes, and you write different things, you emphasize different things, you have different styles. So it's not that you're necessarily disagreeing, but you're writing because you write. So by the time of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, there was 13 different formal formulations of the Torah Shebe'al Peh, none of which was accepted by all of Israel. That comes in Rabbeinu HaKadosh, and he takes these 13 formulations and he turns them into the Mishnah. And then the Mishnah becomes the national formulation recognized by all the Jewish people. This is our Torah Shebe'al Peh. Yeah? You understand? Okay, let's do another line or two and then we'll... All right. So the Gemara asks a question. Is it correct that David HaMelech actually calls himself a Hasid? Is that the way he viewed things? The HaKetiv. There's a pasuk that says, David HaMelech is saying as follows in this pasuk. I wish I knew firmly, I wish I knew with certainty that one day I will see the good of God, the good that God has in the land of life. Meaning, David HaMelech is saying, I only wish I could go to Olam Haba one day and see the beauty of Olam Haba. But if you're a Hasid, what's your issue? If you're a Hasid, then obviously you're going to go to Olam Haba. So you see the contradiction in these 2 verses. One verse he says, David here he says, so which is it? Now, in Parashat Nisavim, there's some words in the Torah, very rare, but it happens. We have like letters with dots above the letters. Like in Parashat Nisavim, it says, Nistarot l'Adonai Eloheinu, Maniglot lanu b'anenu ad olam. So on the Nistarot, you have like 11 dots, right? So the dots is rare. In the book of Tehillim, you have it over here in this pasuk. So you see the word luleh? On the word luleh, you have dots. So Rabbi Yosef says, בוא נהיה those dots מעולה. אמר דוד לפני הקדוש ברוך הוא, ריבונו של עולם, מובטח אני בך שאתה משלם שכר טוב לצדיקים לעתיד לבוא. So David HaMelech is telling God the following, look, I know that the tzaddikim in the world to come, they get their reward. I have no doubt about that. Sachar va'onesh, of course, it's pashut. In this world, maybe you don't get your reward. In the world to come, I know I'm going to get my reward. Aval, here's my issue. Eni yodea im yesh li chalek ben yamim lav. I don't know. Am I going to be one of those people that's considered a tzaddik? Why? Savar shemeh yigrom hachet. He was concerned that maybe he'll do an avon and he'll blow it all. That's what the Chachamim say. Al ta'amen be'asmecha ad yom motecha. Do not believe in yourself until the day that you die, because you never know when you could suddenly lose it. And in the case of David HaMelech, ended up doing a horrible avirah with Bathsheba. Whatever the avirah was, different. Gemara says, lo chata, okay, fair enough. But there was something, he did something wrong, right? Obviously, there was an avirah there. So he's correct for being concerned. Maybe I'll do an avirah one day. Well, he did an avirah at the end, right? So that's why the Chachamim say, Al ta'amen be'asmecha. There was a Yochanan Kohen Gadol, who was in the days of the Maccabees, a generation after the war. The war was over, now he was a king, and he was a Kohen. And the Chachamim, they were visiting him one day. He was 80 years old. He was a tzaddik his whole life. He was a Kohen Gadol. And basically, somebody threw a comment. His mom, she was once held hostage in this palace. This is during the Maccabean Wars. And one of the Chachamim threw a comment implying that somehow his mom became illegitimate for the kehuna, meaning anyone who came from the mom cannot be a kohen, because since she was in a hostage situation, God forbid she might have been defiled. So it was like some sort of comment that one of the Chachamim made, and this Yochanan Kohen Gadol hears this comment. And he said, "Are you people saying that I'm not legitimate? I've been Kohen Gadol for I'm 80 years old now, and like this is how you're talking now?" So he went berserk, and he went against the Chachamim, and he joined the Saddukim. The Saddukim were the more pro-Greek of his days. So the Chachamim say, Al ta'amin b'asmecha ad yom motecha. Don't believe in yourself till the day you die, because bar minan, God forbid, you don't know what happens, you can end up making avirah. That's what was on David HaMelech's mind. We'll continue believing that next week. If there's any questions, let's ask them now.
Isn't the next line in this Perek Tehillim, Kaveh Hashem Hazak Mitzvah
Yes.
Hashem? So doesn't he trust in Hashem that he's at least make the right decisions, and that we would all believe that?
We believe in Bechira Chofshit. We trust in Hashem, but ultimately we make decisions. And if a person makes a destructive decision, he can blow it all. And he was worried about potentially blowing it all, right? So that was his concern. It's kind of like telling for us. We all have to be on our guard, not to make mistakes. Be careful, wherever good life takes us.
And interestingly, he does make a mistake with the whole bunch of us.
No, he does make a mistake, and he suffered for it terribly, but he made teshuvah, and Hashem accepted his teshuvah, and he was forgiven.
But it's shocking. It seems so out of character for him. Even everything else, he wouldn't. Joel's trying to kill him. He wouldn't depend.
So, and here's a musar, and you're right.
He was out of his way to go kill Uriah.
And this is a peshat. And here's a musar. If David HaMelech, who is David HaMelech, and he made a mistake, he was worried about making a mistake, and he still made a mistake. So we all have to be on our guard 24/7. Gentlemen, have a good night.